Committee meeting. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So there are no public comments from the residents today. So we'll start out with our buildings and grounds meeting, and we have a presentation on an Eagle Scout project.
You gonna fix center?
Don't need to hand it out.
Do you want handouts? I'll give you the slide. Tab.
My son's gonna be so excited.
That's his notes.
Don't take that one. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for having us this evening. I'll start. We're all familiar with each other, I believe. So I'm here with Caleb this evening. One of the things that we've been doing every year as a incentive for our kiddos during our Red for Ed is we've been adding different things to the playground. Last year we added a Gaga pit, which has been very popular this year. In thought of what we could add this year, we wanted to look at adding a wall ball wall. Wall ball, if you're not familiar, is a popular, very complicated game played by second and third graders where they throw a ball against a wall and then catch said ball. So the reason why, Graham, can we go to the first slide? The reason why I was intrigued by this idea is you can see my picture up here of Centerville Elementary. The yellow circle up there is where they currently enjoy playing this creative sport. That is up along the building where they throw the ball against the wall of the building, which is fun for them. However, the classes that are above that space, when the balls go banging off the windows, it's not necessarily the most ideal situation. You'll also notice that around the outside of that yellow circle is green grass. Inside the yellow circle is a mud pit when it rains. So I've been really angling for a way to get them off of the grass. And this gives us a great opportunity to do so. Ideally, we're going to move it down to the red circle where they can play on the blacktop. That way, even when the weather is poor, they can still play. And it gets them off that space and that we can maybe grow some grass back again. So having Caleb being willing to take on this project has been a great opportunity, I think, for both of us. I personally am an Eagle Scout, so it was a great thing to be able to help someone else out with a project like this. So now I'm going to turn it over to him, and he's going to walk you through the rest of our slides.
So Caleb, just a heads up, please speak into the microphone, otherwise we won't hear you.
Okay. So my name is Caleb Keel. I'm a 9th grader at high school over here, HHS. I attended Mount Elementary School. I did not go to CES, but I have a lot of friends that went there. And I've gone to the service hours there for their fun thing at the end of the year. I forget what it's called. Fun Fest. Yeah, it's that. Okay. I'm currently a Life Scout and I'm trying to get Eagle Scout. Eagle Scout is the highest kind of achievement that you can get in Boy Scouts, and I really would enjoy having that. And some of the sports I do, I am a swimmer, so that is my main sport. I do that, and I also just came from a track meet, so that's why I was a bit late. Yeah. Obviously, here I went over the location about how it's where it's going to be, the importance of that, and why we don't want it where it is right now.
Go to the next slide, Graham.
Yeah, next slide. All right. So let me go over the blueprints right here. So I'll open mine a bit so I can see them. So what we are planning to do, we are having a yeah, I kind of need to see.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. So we are going to have a 16 feet, it's going to be 16 feet wide, 10 feet tall. And there's going to be, it's going to be on both sides. That's a bit loud. On both sides, there's going to be the face of the wall, which is going to be deck boards instead of 2x4s. Just, I'll talk about the materials in a little bit then. But, so we have 5 columns that, for the structural support, the main columns, they are going to be drilled 4 feet into the ground. Talked to an engineer about this. He helped me come up with these blueprints. It's actually a company that helped donate most of the supplies for this project. And he went over this with his boss, made sure that everything is safe and sound, and that it'll work and not fall down in the wind or something like that. All right, so there's a lot of like detailed things. I'm not sure if I should go into it, but we have it's just about all the fastenings, every single thing. There's gonna also be 2x6s that go in between to be kind of like studs to help secure the boards on it. And and another important thing, there's gonna be a piece on top so that no rain or mud or anything can get down in there. All right, next slide is just the other part of the blueprints. You can take a look at that quick. So that shows the face of the wall and the back. The back does not currently have the updated, but we are going to put a back side of that on it too, just so it can be double-sided also. Just about the fastenings. And so for this project, we're going to need I'm going to have about 6 to 8 scouts for this project. They're going to be all older scouts because for Boy Scouts of America, you have to be a certain age to use the certain tools that we're going to need for this project. So I'm going to try to have them do that. And can you go to the next slide? Okay, there you go. So for the materials and the costs. So first I'll go over all the wood stuff. We're gonna have 23 5/4 of an inch by and then there's 6x16 deck boards. That's what's gonna be the face of the wall, covering both of the sides. 2x8, that's gonna be for the top. 2x8s are gonna be on the side of the board. And then these things. All the support posts are going to be these glue lamp posts. It's what specifically this company makes them so that they're 2x6s glued together. For this one, it's 3-ply, so it's 3 2x6s glued together, which is a lot stronger and it won't warp, which is not because if it's a 10-foot long post, it could, because of all the weight that's going to be on it. If it's a normal 6x6, it could warp, which we don't want that to happen, so it'll last. So that's why they're donating that. And then right now I have 50, 80-pound bags of concrete mix, and I have the price there, $5.48 for one, and it'll be $274 for that. The PTO is covering the cost for that, they said, for all the stuff. And we have some extra costs. We have sono tubes that we need. Those kind of like just where the concrete's gonna go in. Liquid nails that will also help with the fasteners that we have. We have wood deck screws, rebar. And then we're gonna have to rent an auger for that. Or we could dig by hand, but that would take a long time.
So, Mr. Kittle,
Yes.
2 questions. First, what is your fundraising strategy, or is this your fundraising strategy?
Alright.
Are you
Yeah.
hoping that we would be able to fund this, or are we one tranche of funding, or
No,
help
no.
us understand that?
So right now I have all of the wood donated by a company. I went up there, talked to the CEO of the company and the engineer, because that's the company that I worked with. They do Eagle projects before with that. I also talked to one of my teachers that's a mason, and he said I'm gonna go down pretty soon to Musser's Concrete in Columbia. They said that they might be willing to donate. I'm gonna try to get the concrete donated too, and then I'll go to Lowe's, see if I'm gonna try to get everything donated for this. Except I don't think that the only thing that I wouldn't be able to get donated is renting an auger. That's the only thing that I would not have.
Does the district have an auger that you might be able to borrow?
Yeah, that's one of the questions that I had for you guys. If I
Pardon me?
could, yes, one question that I had for the district,
Okay.
if they had one that they could come out and drill it.
Do we have an auger, Mrs. James?
So yes, we do have an auger with a tractor.
However.
I'd be happy to use that.
Donating his time.
That would be no.
I might volunteer to come drive.
Oh, Mr. Keener.
That would also be no. I don't think we have liability insurance for that.
Mr.
Know
Keener,
that.
just to follow up on the financials, anything that Caleb isn't able to have donated, the PTO, we have budgeted in their annual line items to cover this cost. So anything that we don't, he's not able to find donated wise, our PTO is willing to cover all of that cost.
Yeah, so we have all that, I have all that plans figured out. And that, can you guys go to the next slide, please? So this is kind of like just like the tools and logistics. So I already talked about the auger. If you guys would, if the district would provide that, that'd be great. And so the wood is going to be transported by the company to wherever it is going to be. And the other question that I do have is that I know that there's the garages behind CMS. Right now my plan is to store the wood in my garage and stain it there, but if I would be able to store it in there for a short period of time until I actually build it, that would help a lot, because then it would be a lot shorter, because since I live in Mountville, that's going to be, I mean, we could make it work, but it's going to be a lot harder to get 10 feet long boards to be transported in the back of like friends' trucks and stuff, or just have the company back out to bring it over to the school. So I'm not sure what the situation on that is.
I know a PTO member who lives right behind the school. I'll talk to her.
Yeah, I'm not
I
volunteering.
mean, it would be like going over the fence or around the fence.
We may, let me do
Fine.
some digging too. I might have some space where we can make that fit.
Okay, yeah. About that. Right now I'm estimating 2 weeks for a project. It could take 3 depending on weather, but it should only be 2. So for the first weekend, it would be kind of like, well, the first day would kind of be prep-ish. It would be making sure that everything is set up where it's supposed to go, and then actually having the holes dug. And then we are going to have, so we're gonna have the holes dug and then put the posts in it and have the concrete filled in there for the first day. Let that set overnight, put posts against it so that it stays up in the spot. And then the next day will be for kind of building the rest of the frame. So not the face of the wall actually, but like the studs, the top, the bottom, everything like that. And then the last weekend would be for finishing it up, making sure all the stain is done and all that. And it's all gonna be, I'm gonna pre-stain it so that when it's up, if it rains or something, since it's gonna be in the rainy season, it will not, it's not going to have any problems with the treatment of it. It already is pre-treated, all the lumber, and then I'm just gonna treat it with that. And right now I'm trying to get the project to be started in May, but I'm also not sure how you guys as a district would be, I don't comfortable with, like, because if it's gonna be during 2 weekends, like during the week there would be kids playing around outside at school. We were gonna put up like one of the orange fences that like go around construction sites, but obviously kids will want to go in there. So I'm not sure if you guys want, if you guys are okay with that during the school year, but if not, it could be during the summer, like during June, early June. And I already went over the additional costs for this project, all about that weekend. Let me check. We checked the power lines and water lines, make sure that that's not interfering with anything.
So I have a couple questions. Is this going to be treated wood?
Yes,
Okay.
it's pre-treated.
And how many concrete posts are you putting in?
5 concrete posts.
Okay. So I'm having trouble. I don't know if it's possible. The blueprints don't really show what it's going to look like. Is there any way we could have some kind of visual depiction?
Yeah, we could definitely get that.
What's that?
Yeah, I could definitely get that from the company of like a physical, like actually like 3D model of it,
Yeah.
if you guys are interested.
I think it'd be good to see what it's going to look like. I mean, I don't object to the project.
Yeah.
I think it's a great idea, but we'd like to see what it looks like. And the other question is, I guess the treated wood down the road will have to be refinished.
Yeah,
I
my
guess-
plan was that, so like 4 to 5 years, it needs to be restained, preferably with the same color stain. And I think the PTO said that they would be upkeeping that because I'm obviously going to be in college and not be able to do that.
Understood.
I
No,
also-
that
Yeah.
sounds good. We want to have some kind of plan because we don't want it to
Yeah.
5 or 6 years get all rotted and then it's a eyesore.
Yeah, yeah, that's something we've already discussed with PTO is that making sure that the cost of upkeep is gonna come from them and they're on board with something like that.
Caleb, is there anything that needs township permitting or anything along those lines?
Yeah, I am going to need a township permit for building since it's going to be underground and it's kind of like a bigger structure. So I'm going to be getting that pretty soon.
Okay.
I don't have it right now, but I'll be getting it.
And then just working into your plan, the days for them to come out and re-inspect after your footers
Yeah.
are in.
So, Mr. Gill, what is your ask from us? Like, what do you want us to do? And what's your time frame for whatever it is that you need us to do?
Yeah.
We're just following the approval process for donations, right? So because this is being donated essentially by the PTO and the donations from Caleb, from the businesses that he's working with, we have to follow the donations process because of the cost. So we're here to present and share with that and then just get the go ahead from the board to be able to accept this donation as a district. So that way we can go ahead and proceed with the process.
Do you need that? You're not on the agenda as a voting item tonight. We can fix that if this is time sensitive. Or, I mean, I guess that's why I asked Mr. Keel, what's his time frame here?
My time frame, I mean, mine is pretty flexible. They want it to be in before the end of the school year, and I think that'd be a good idea because I remember when I was in 6th grade, they put in a Gaga pit over the summer and I didn't get to use it, so I really wanted to, but I never got the chance to. But if I have to go into the summer, I'm not. I'm fine with that.
As far as timing, Mrs. James, Mr. Bremersky, I think it makes sense to do it after school's out, just from a safety standpoint. And I would like to see some kind of visual image, what it's going to look like, the rest of the board. I think we're all for this. This is great. You're donating your time, Eagle Scout project. But I can't tell from the blueprint what it's going to look like. I'd like some kind of image that we could all look at.
Sure, we can do that. I personally, I would love to have it done before the end of the school year, so that students who are in 6th grade, because they were part of this process, would be able to utilize it. If that's not something that we can do, obviously we'll make do. Having a spot where Mike, if you can go back to like the very first location slide. So that red circle being where we're going to put it, it's pretty out of the way. Fencing that off and not having access to that would be a pretty easy process for us. And we would be able over 2 weekends to be able to keep the kids away from that. That wouldn't be a big problem. So, but again, if that's something that would be a hang up, we'll bite the bullet and do it over the summer.
My thought was ask the recess aides, the teachers, the principal, and if you guys feel comfortable keeping the kids away from it and safe, I think it gives them a really good opportunity to be responsible and also see what's going on and see the process and get excited about it. So as long as you guys feel comfortable with that.
I mean, we've had situations with the playground before where we've had areas we've had to keep them away from and we don't necessarily have that issue.
Bees.
Yeah.
Bees.
The bees, yes.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have my dad pass around like the bigger blueprints to see kind of like, I mean, it's not a 3D model, but I think that is a kind of like a better representation than what is on
I was
the
looking
paper
at more
and up there
Visual.
that you can see. So I'm gonna have them do that.
Yeah, gotcha.
Not being a wall ball aficionado, I'm just gonna ask a silly question. Is it gonna play the same against deck boards as it does against brick?
I would imagine so. Like,
Okay.
obviously with Caleb taking this and making it like a firm structure, the idea, I think it should be just about the same as playing off the building.
Well, they'll let you know.
Yes, they will.
Oh, they will.
They will make us aware if it is not.
And I just have one more question. Do they play this game only in the fall and do all students play it? And will this game cause the students to stall when they're called at the end of recess?
It is very popular. If we could set up a league for wall ball, they would set up a wall ball league. And they are very competitive. It is mainly a second, third, fourth-ish grade game, but it is something that they are very avid about. And when we are transitioning between late fall and early spring when the grass is wet, they are very antsy to get back on there to be able to play. So this would, again, allow them, based on the location, they could play on the blacktop during the winter. When we're blacktop only, they would have that space to continue to play all year round.
Thank you.
Can we just watch for injuries on the blacktop? Because I know it gets very competitive in the grass / dirt / rock area. And can we just like maybe watch that in the nurse's office and make sure?
I'm actually hopeful it may tone it down a bit.
Okay. if you think
Because
so.
the pavement is not as fun to hit as the dirt, so.
You think they'll up their game?
I think they may tone it down just a bit.
Okay, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, I remember when I was in elementary school, we didn't have any. Yeah, no one got injured playing wall ball.
Yeah, I mean, now it's rocks from underneath the dirt,
Right.
so maybe this might work better. I don't know. We'll see. Awesome.
Is there any safety considerations, kids walking into it, or, I mean, have we thought all this through?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't, the location to me is perfect in terms of being out of the way. It's in a location where when our building aides are out there, based on where they're typically stationed, they're able to see both sides. So it's not something that you're going to be able to hide behind. I mean, it's going to be a 10 by 16 foot wall. If you don't see that one coming, I feel like I don't know if I can help you much. So, but I think it's in a location where, based on where they play all over the playground, it should be pretty out of the way.
Gotcha. I guess I would ask Mrs. James, Mrs. Hall, Dr. Dandridge, and Mr. Romersky, are you all comfortable with letting them do this before school's out?
I would say that as far as they're going to get the first week, the real safety concerns of holes in the dirt and things like that are going to be taken care of in that first weekend's worth of work. So if the principal and the aides are able to keep the kids away from it, I think it's probably going to be fine.
Yeah, and as far as going like with the finish thing, it's gonna the gap between the deck boards is gonna be so small, and there's gonna be posts on both of the sides, so that it will be, unless you're like a professional rock climber, it'll basically be impossible to climb it. But yeah.
So I was a climber as a kid, and there's a will, there's a way. So
if
I
there's a
do
way.
think that is something that has to be worked on with the staff, to make sure kids understand what they can do and can't do, because kids climbing, that will be a concern, at least from my lens. And I think the other part is kids playing on the other side of the wall. Generally, I get the wall ball playing, the ball doesn't go over the wall, especially when you have a really tall wall to play on. But in this case, it's possible, depending on the throw, that the ball could go over. So we want to make sure if there is a game going on, that kids aren't necessarily directly behind.
Yeah.
And that really will be the staff and Mr. Kramer, sorry, Dr. Kramer, to address.
Yeah, I mean, again, they climb on the, playground equipment just the same. So, that's for us to, like you said, during a building meeting of, here are the expectations for that space, just like we do with the playground equipment in the Gaga pit. We go over, these are the expectations, the rules, this is how it works. So we would do that with this space as well. So I wouldn't anticipate any problems outside the norm.
Anyone else have any questions? Thank you. We appreciate your willingness to help the kids have more fun.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me present tonight, and I'm hoping to get this project underway pretty soon.
I would just a piece of advice in terms of working with the township with the permit. You may want to connect with them about timelines of when they need information, how to review it, how to get it. So if you're looking at your timeline, kind of work backwards from there based on what you hear from them.
Okay, yeah, sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, our next item on the agenda is KCBA Hempfield High School update.
Thank you, everybody. As Ryan's getting set up, tonight we wanted to give a little bit of an update about the high school project in preparation for the town hall meeting next Wednesday. So essentially what you're going to see tonight is a bit of a preview of that. We don't have any walls. We have to, but we are still early in the design. That was very impressive, by the way. Um, and wanted to obviously give an update, take any questions that you have, but really we wanted to give you guys a kind of a preview of what we'll be talking about at the town hall meeting. The town hall meeting is recommended as one of the first of a few times that we're going to specifically have special dates outside of a boardroom, thank you, outside of a board meeting to update the public. This is obviously a very big project, a very big community effort, a very big community investment. So it's important to share that with the community, with teachers, with students, so they see what it is, see what it isn't. Oftentimes rumors can get started, so it's good to show everybody what the project is solving and why exactly the district has decided to take on this task at this time. So the idea is that this is one of a few times. We may do this again in the fall. And then the state of Pennsylvania requires what's called an Act 34 hearing, which is essentially another time when we would go back and present to the community. So that may be late winter, early spring of next year. We essentially try to do that about a month or two before you'd be going out to bid. So that may be the kind of last public presentation. That's a little bit more formal. So sometimes it's nice to do things like we're doing next week and another one in the fall to be a little less litigious. The Act 34 hearing is actually a hearing. It's run by a lawyer and there's a stenographer and people give testimony. But these are a little bit more of a looser opportunities to provide some information to the public. The presentation would then be given to you. You can post that online. So all summer long, as members are coming up to you saying, hey, you're a school board member. What's going on with the high school? Well, click here. You can show exactly on the website what the building looks like, where it's going to be, and answer a lot of those questions like, when is it happening? Is my child going to be safe during construction? What's the cost? And a lot of those things. So a lot of that information can be included and shared on the website. So if you're ready to go, some of this will be a review for you. And then we have a lot of new images and some animations that Ryan will share at the end here. To hopefully you'll be impressed and wowed at the same time with what everything looks like. Did you turn this on? You didn't turn it on. Hands it to me, doesn't turn it on. There we go. A little bit easier. So the steps that we've taken to date, it's been quite an effort since actually last summer when we started a bit of the study with you guys. We've been meeting a lot. Bi-weekly design committee meetings with your administration. I joke all the time, the amount of times I walk by Ryan's office and see Bill's face on one of the monitors there because they're going over things about the high school. There has been a lot of collaboration between all of us and you on the design and the amenities of the school. It has been extremely helpful to have that back and forth. And again, we always say we can design a high school, but the best high school we'll design for you is one that we design with you. So we feel that that's been working really, really well. We went through and surveyed the existing building, certainly the Buchanan wing that is staying, as well as the Franklin wing, with some areas in there that we need to make sure that we document very well and understand how to essentially unplug that building and its mechanical systems to the rest of the building. We have a slew of different consultants, from mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineers to civil engineers, a lot of consultants that we're working with for the larger design and documentation of everything, especially, as I said, reviewing existing utilities. There's been geotechnical investigation, infiltration testing. I know there's a water issue and concerns of things in that area. So all of that testing has started. We've got buildings and grounds committee meetings like tonight that we're going to, and a lot of conversations about HVAC systems and sustainability, which we just had a meeting last week with some board members about. We have a meeting coming up about safety and security, which is certainly important as well. So all of those things are being undertaken, and we can kind of continue to work that as we go.
Just a quick question, in geotechnical, when do we think that'll be complete with results?
So that, it's, the testing is underway. The report will be about another month or so.
Okay,
to-
so
till we get that
probably
back.
late April, early May?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And that's important that's required by, and I know there was a lot of interest in that, that's required by the township and municipality to see what the flow rates would be of rainwater infiltration into the site. But it also gives us an ability to make sure there isn't any surprises over in that end of the site as well.
So we don't build another pack with water in it.
Exactly. You don't want to hit a swimming pool as we go down. So we are still very early, as much as we've been talking, in the process. Schematic design, which is kind of that initial concept phase. Where should this space be? How should everything kind of be laid out? We're looking to conclude that at the end of essentially next month, which is why it's a good time to kind of update you and the community on what everything looks like. That way, once the summer hits, our team and the consultants are going 100 miles an hour on construction documentation. Those are the blueprints and the drawings that will be going to contractors for eventual construction, as well as cost estimates, which will be coming along the way as well. We're still on track to be for construction to begin the summer of 2026, with the new building completed at the summer of 2028. That's always a good time to pause and say that's the phase one. Phase two, which takes another year, is taking Franklin down and building the parking lot. Phase two is the part that everyone always forgets. We move into the new building. Hey, it's great. Why is there still construction trucks here and everything? So that second phase, when the new building is completed, still takes a while to take down Franklin and to come back with a parking lot. So that's why we're looking at 2029 into 2030 to complete the entire project. So what does all of that look like? This is a existing site model of both buildings of Franklin and Buchanan, kind of how everything looks like now. You can see your property line around the outside, including down to Kauffman Road, including this building as well as the Early Learning Center. This building in red is the new building. So there will be some time when you will have 2.5 high schools on one site. You're looking at building essentially on top of the existing baseball field. That baseball field will remain for next season as well, your 25-26 season. And as soon as the last pitch is thrown there in 2026, that field will be relocated. We'll show you that in a second. But this is what the size of the addition looks like within the existing kind of nook and crannies of the existing building. Very easily, Franklin goes away, and you can kind of see going from this to this, the completed building. So now you have our new building connected to the existing Buchanan wing and a large parking lot out on what was the Franklin side of the property. So again, we kind of go back to existing conditions, and we see we have parking kind of all over the place, and the buses alongside Buchanan. But one of the concerns we had with site safety was just where cars were coming in, where cars were coming out. In the new building, we have a little bit more organization there. We have 2 very large parking lots, a student parking lot on the left, staff parking on the right, one large loop at the front of the building for parents to drop off students safely in one location. And then we have another location in the what we'll call the rear of the school along Kauffman for drop off as well. So we're limiting where those areas are. There's not 15 different doors to get into the building. There's one front door. And during the day, that's the only door that's accessible to visitors. And then buses are still traversing along the side of the existing Buchanan.
Like, where is that front door?
Front door is right here. So the front door still faces Bank. And staff parking, the idea is that parents would come in and loop around the staff and then come out because students might get a little crazy in their parking lot. The hope here is for them to park and get out of their cars and come into the front door. I'll show you in a moment, but we know a lot of your students may have early release, or they're coming in for second block. They may have internships, junior, senior year where they're leaving. So we have the ability to watch them coming and going from one parking lot. And when they re-enter the school, there's going to be a kind of a secondary entrance for students only at the corner, essentially where we took Franklin down, so that we can have security personnel there to watch and check in students as they're coming and going. So it's important with best practices of school safety to greatly limit the areas where people can kind of come and go. And if all of your parking is at the front of the school, that's pretty ideal.
So for indoor athletic events,
Mhm.
people come in through the front door also?
People are going to come in where most of the parking is, and that's right off the front. So again, we want everyone, and we're going to talk a little bit about this, whether you're coming for basketball, whether you're coming to the Performing Arts Center, which is still located down in the lower left. We're providing means of coming everyone in through the front door to the existing gym, or this is actually a new gym that's being proposed in the new building, or through and over to the PAC. All of that happens at the front door.
Another question about parking.
Sure.
We're taking up a lot of acreage with parking lots. Would it dramatically change the cost of the project to do a multi-level parking structure, similar to what maybe they have at Penn Manor, and keep more green space?
Yes, it would cost significantly more to do
It
that.
would, okay,
Parking garages are extremely expensive.
okay.
It seems strange to think that way, but it is shockingly expensive to the tune of, $25,000 per parking space sometimes, to let something like
Versus
that.
how much for a surface lot usually?
Right. Well, this would be significantly less. And we need these areas for underground retention of water anyway. So a lot of that is being factored into how we construct all that. One of the challenges, if you go back to the existing building, you can see how much Franklin is still there. And while we're building the new building, it's still there. So with all of this parking being underground infiltration, we can only build about half of that up in this area because Franklin is still going to be there when we start that construction. So once that comes down, we can increase the amount of stormwater management that we have under that area. But timing wise, we have to have it designed and prepared for all of it while Franklin is still there. So that's some of the challenges that the civil engineers are working on to make sure that we don't have flooding issues and things when we have 3 high school buildings and a parking lot that we're trying to build. There's not a lot of grass in that area at that time. We were showing along the side of Buchanan that the buses currently now head north. What's the name? What's that really? Stanley. So heading up towards Stanley. So this is how the buses kind of go in now. The thought was with all of the parking up here and everyone heading out to Stanley and onto Bank, to flip the buses and have them come the other way. So this is still where the bus drop off will be. Works great because it's nice and wide. We're just going to turn the buses the other way. And now buses will be coming down on pickup and drop off at dismissal along Kauffman. So cars to the north, buses heading to the south. And that's another way to try to create some additional safety on the site to keep buses and cars a little bit further away from each other. Understanding as well, the high school is kind of in the upper left corner of your district geographically. So most of those buses are heading south and east anyway. So it seemed to make more sense to have them discharge onto Kauffman and head out on their way away from the cars and students.
So that'll be exclusively for buses then?
Yes.
And where will the students go in? They still turn around? and go in
The
the
students are
front?
coming in off of Stanley. They're able to come in here, circulate and come back out. They can go to Bank, they can go this way.
I mean,
but-
from the buses as they're unloaded. Is that where they gonna load at the bus right?
Oh, they can still come out of, again, Buchanan is still here. So there's a couple different places where they can come out of the building to load onto the buses. Then we also have some buses down here out of the new entrance of the building as well. So we can separate that and we know, all right, this group's going to go a little bit more west. Let's keep them to the left. This group's going to go a little bit more south. Let's keep them to the south. So we have a couple different spaces. And what's nice with the Chevron parking, that's where they park in aisles. Bus number 52 is always in the same spot. So it's not like if they're all lining up and 52 or hit a red light, now they're 3 cars back. If I'm on bus 52 and it's always there, it's always there. So I come out this way. If I'm going to another area, all right, your bus is at the back door, we'll call it, or the Kauffman Road entrance. We're always coming out there.
So the kids can come out that way, but can they go in that way too?
Yes.
But you're saying the entrance for everyone else is up.
So in the morning, we have the ability to come in at the Kauffman Road entrance. We have the ability to come in where everybody comes in now at Buchanan, and we have the ability to come in up top. In the mornings, everybody's coming from many different places. That's fine. It's the locking down the building. When the bell rings, we lock this thing down, and the only place at all that anyone can come in is the front door.
I assume our busing guys can consult with all this.
This was actually his idea.
Okay,
He said it would be the
alright.
best way to do it.
Sounds good. Thank you.
And Charles, we currently operate HHS with 3 entrances in the morning. We're still maintaining 3 entrances in the morning in this plan.
And again, that's typical. With a school of this size and 2,000 kids, it'd be hard to have everybody coming in one place. The safety issue is trying to separate buses from cars. We always say you can train your bus drivers. It's hard to train. You've got kids that have had a license for a whopping 12 months and parents that are late for work, so you try to keep them at one end and keep the buses at the other.
The yellow arrows would be no cars, just buses.
Right, so during the morning you have that. Now at night and for sports and things like that, the parking lot is still available. So you still have the ability to park there and walk up here and into the building, or if you choose, you could have other entrances for performing arts nights and things like that. The pack is here, so we probably want to have some handicap parking and things like that a little closer to that space. We can certainly encourage everyone to be up in this upper lot and coming into the building, but yes, if there's, handicap parking and things like that want to be a little bit closer, you could certainly choose to open that up as well. And we're going to show some animations of what that looks like kind of coming into the building.
Thank you.
So the breakdown of.
Brady, you had a question?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, just on traffic study, and this may all come later. With this large student lot here, do you anticipate, or are we still thinking that we'll be parking kids over at the football stadium at all?
No,
Okay, excellent. And any need for updating like an additional traffic signal in here anywhere beyond the one that's at Church and Kauffman?
that would come from a traffic study.
Later, okay, thanks.
Yeah, we're certainly hoping not. And we think part of the story, which is true, it's not like we're adding anything new. We're not adding 1,000 more kids. We're not building a middle school here that doesn't exist. We know that there's some increase in enrollment, but it's not to the point where you weren't ready for that anyway. So going to the township, we're going to say, hey, we're not adding any people to this. So the hope of that then is that we wouldn't need to increase traffic regulation around the campus site. This is to right size an existing building and to modernize the existing educational environment. It's not because we have 2,000 more kids coming.
So Mr. Grossman, getting the parking. So you say we won't need the parking spaces for the kids. There's be enough in this new parking lot.
Yeah, that's the plan. And that was a major goal, especially working with Mr. Gleason. Having students cross that intersection in the morning with the sun east-west, like if you've ever driven that road in the morning, like the
Yeah.
sun's right in your eyes certain times of year. So we want all our students north of Kauffman when at the heavy traffic times, and this accomplishes that.
Improve safety.
Yep.
Yeah, and this is, to that point, again, this is, if we were building this brand new in a cornfield, this is the setup. Student parking, staff parking separate, long bus loops, a clear identifiable main entrance. So I mean, we're ticking all the boxes of being brand spanking new. And buses on the side. If you went the tour that we did at Avalon Grove, it was similar. The student parking was in the front. In that case, faculty was in the back, but separate. And then you had a long bus loop along the side. Here you go. You got, brand new site design for half the building. So the organization of the building kind of looks like this, where we have the gym that's to the left that says physical education. That's the existing large gym, and we're building a new gym next to it. What was nice there is all of the amenities of locker rooms and things like that are already there. The fitness center, that looks great. There's a lot of things that, again, we don't have to rebuild by maintaining kind of this central zone in the middle there of education. So if I'm coming to an event of physical education, if I'm coming to an event in the new gym, I walk through the front door, I go left. Coming to a wrestling match or something else that may be in the auction room, I walk in the same door, I look right. All of that is right there, and there's a lot of amenities for that to be able to be shared. One thing that was really special was making sure that we could bring music and performing arts together over by the Performing Arts Center. So right now they're in the Franklin wing. They're by that little auditorium that used to be the main auditorium before the PAC was built. So they're separate from where the PAC is. Well, now they're going to be right behind it, basically right behind the stage where they'll be able to easily, get on and off the stage. Things like technology and engineering education, basically your STEM center. You have some phenomenal programs. They're spread out a little bit as well. So this was the ability to kind of rewrite where everybody sits and have them as a group. So you can see that there's a lot of clustering then and some overlap for amenity reasons and efficiency reasons kind of scattered throughout the building. So we're trying to bring those areas and people together. You can see on here as well, the library moves over alongside the PAC as well, and kind of that little wedge shape that's there now on the exterior, we're going to fill part of that in. That's the lower level. As you start to move upstairs, you get more of what we'll call the blue there is our core academic spaces. Your typical, math, science, or math and social studies and history classrooms, as well as administrative support. So again, this mid-level is the front door of the school. So everyone coming in is essentially at the second floor. You can go down to the first or up to the third, but the administrative suite is right at the front door. And then up on the third floor, you can see a lot more blue. That's where a lot more of our, again, common spaces are intermixed with science. So the science on the left is what's already there in Buchanan. But we're going to put some more science right next to it in the new building. So we didn't want to separate the two departments, but we have them essentially right down the hall from each other. Some of those in renovated existing rooms, some of those in new rooms as part of the addition. So Ryan's going to kind of get to show you the fun stuff and walk you through what we're doing and what everything looks like. We wanted to show this as just an example of what we're not doing. Here's the Buchanan wing on the outside along that bus loop. That is remaining. That is staying the way it looks like. Inside that building is a lot of work. That's a lot of the mechanical, electrical, plumbing work. Again, most of this reason for what we're doing here is based on the infrastructure upgrades of the existing, the needs of the existing building. What we found is that Buchanan was in good shape. It just needed infrastructure upgrade. So that'll all be done. So when you look at it from the outside, it might not look like a lot, but there's certainly a lot done on the inside of that building, and then a lot to do with the new building. Dive in.
And so as we move around the building, we really start to get into the exciting pieces of the new addition. So here's a bird's eye view of what existing Buchanan and Franklin looks like. If we move to the new bird's eye view, you can see that large addition once again spanning over into the baseball field. A lot of presence off of Kauffman, and there'll also be a lot of presence off of Stanley here. So as we zoom into the Kauffman view, once again, as Mike was describing, this would be that secondary entrance for drop off in the morning. Also, that additional exit for buses in the afternoon. And taking a little bit of a design cue from the Buchanan wing. Right now it's 2-story red brick and then an upper white stucco. So a lot of our spaces lend well to that here as well. So on the right-hand side is the cafeteria. We have a tall stair element denoting that entry. And then the left-hand side are those music classrooms right behind the PAC. So once again, this would be visible from the athletic fields. This will be a great secondary entrance view looking across the athletic fields towards the Hempfield Black Knights High School.
Is that a clock you have on the front facade?
As one idea, yes,
Okay.
a clock tower up there.
Kind of cool. Do we have any old bells sitting around from old buildings?
That I
What
do
we
not know. Moving around to the Franklin side, similar existing image here, bird's eye image. As we move to the proposed, you can see that large parking lot. But once again, a large presence from the front door, zooming into the front door. You can see that same notion of entry, covered canopy, as we know that, students may be waiting outside to be picked up or before the school day. So not a full bus canopy or anything like that, but some cover there. And certainly want to incorporate school logos and colors wherever we can. So then moving into the building, as we move into the building underneath the canopy, on the left-hand side, as Mike was describing, is administration. There's also a secure vestibule there for visitors when they're entering. But then we arrive to this beautiful main entrance lobby. You can see right to the left is the new main gymnasium. Continuing down straight there would lead to the secondary entrance. We'll show you what that looks like in a second. But entering into the gymnasium, this is one idea of what game night could look like here at Hempfield. This is a 3-station gym for physical education, but also a great spot for an evening game. Right now, the roof is popped to allow natural daylight into the space.
How many people will that seat?
3,000 is the current plan.
What's our current gym?
Yeah. it's still-
1850, 1900.
Yeah, I was gonna guess. Moving to the center of the school, this is an area we're calling Knight's Way. To the left, you can see a LGI. We'll jump into that space in a second. But also a black box theater opportunity for performing arts. And then heading towards the Buchanan wing, that's where that wedge of space for the library, as well as the Learning Commons. We'll get to that space here in a second. We start to go into it. Also, chorus room right here off of the Learning Commons. Here's what a replica of one of your 2 LGIs that's currently in Franklin, which will be taken down when Franklin's taken down. So this is the tiered version LGI. There's also a second LGI planned for renovation in Buchanan, which was the existing wrestling room. So that would be a flat LGI, but plenty of space for a lot of students to be able to gather. And then taking a look at the learning, go ahead.
The various design elements that we're seeing here, which in my humble opinion look really cool, are they aligned with the board's current budgetary projections?
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
thank you.
yes, absolutely. Yes, and we try to promote durable materials whenever possible. Obviously, we want the interior finishes to last just as long as the building. So certainly when we're choosing these finishes, and there'll be lots of discussions with our interior designers throughout the process in order to make sure that these materials are durable throughout. But for the purposes of these renderings, yes, they're included. So taking a look at the Learning Commons, this is the space which is just outside of the library, which currently you do not have. You do not have this gathering space for students for learning. Certainly pairs well with the library. So moving into the library, you can see that Learning Commons comes in a bit. So an opportunity for students to gather, but still an opportunity for stacks as well as classroom space for various learning activities. Once again, some other additional group gathering areas for projection, as well as collaborative learning. And then finally, cafeteria. First look at what new cafeteria could look like. The front half towards the south is double height space. The spot to the north, space to the north, single height because we have classrooms above that space.
Now that looks a lot bigger than our current cafeteria. Or is it about the same?
So yes, it's the same seating area. The difference with your cafeteria right now is your queuing space, your lines are part of your cafeteria. So your cafeteria is actually a third bigger than what we would consider it needs to be, because it has to also incorporate those queuing lines. In this design, the hallway outside of the cafeteria is able to act as that queuing area into the serving and then be released into the cafeteria.
Better efficient use.
Yes, absolutely. So that's a preview of schematic design. Again, we still have another month to go, but certainly ahead of the town hall meeting, wanted to share this all with you. And
I see some similarities to the Avon Grove design, different building, but I'm seeing things that I remember
Yeah,
when we visited there.
as Ryan said, I mean, there's a lot, the material selection is primarily about durability. But you can see in some of those areas, and even here where there's a little bit of wood in the ceiling, a lot of that is for acoustics. But it's also, you know, trying to create a little bit more of a warm feel. So there's an idea that, yeah, I'm inside, but we're going to use a few natural materials where possible, to try to, one, cool that space, but also, you know, create a little bit of a linkage to nature. You've got a lot of natural light in certain spaces as well, so there's a lot more components to that. You know, Ryan kind of talked about that learning space, or the learning commons as a space you don't have. You sort of have that now outside the cafeteria, but it's tiny and it's all just a hallway, and you got to go up and there's stairs and a ramp. And so that area, at least when we were doing our initial analysis of the building, was a place that people like to gather, but it was really, really small. So now if we create that space and just allow that to be a little bit bigger, utilize that as, there's a lot of functionality to that. There's almost a secondary lobby for the Performing Arts Center. Similar to Avon Grove, where right out in front of their performing arts space was, you know, a large student gathering area. So that is where there's a couple of similarities like that. They may look different, but the theory behind all of those and the success stories that we heard from the faculty there about how that works well, great, let's implement that, you know, as we can in here.
So what you saw here is kind of, will be in a sense in the middle of the presentation on April 2nd. So trying to kind of set the stage as to district updates, and then why we're doing what we're doing, what the need is, and then showing some of this work. And then at the end, just kind of wrapping up the presentation with how do we do it. So
What is the anticipated format for the community forum, and what role will you want the board to play?
so there will be several of us speaking through the presentation and providing the presentation. Obviously, Mike and Ryan will be there from KCBA to do this part of it. I will be speaking, Dr. Brossman will be speaking, Mr. Marish will be speaking, different parts of it. And from a board standpoint, you'll be introduced at the very beginning. And then at the end, we're going to do a Q&A. So there may be some questions that are for board members to kind of answer, but it's more just to kind of hear what community members are asking, kind of hear the whole presentation, and also just to be able to engage with the community before and after.
And will it be like kind of at the end, like an open reception type of thing where people can mingle, or is that?
At the end, it'll be the ability to interact will be in the pack, and so you can go out into the lobby and people can talk there.
Okay.
So yeah.
Any questions for KCBA?
Thank you for working so collaboratively. It makes me feel good about the whole process.
Yeah, you know, transportation, and I'm sure the music and arts people have been involved in all this too. I'm sure they probably like everything. They were all kind of two different locations before. Now they're going to be centralized, if the way I understand it.
Yeah, they're happy with that, and some other recent changes that have been made. So KCBA has done an incredible job of listening.
An important skill. Thank you.
All right.
And I also want to, I know they're here, and I know I've told them this, and I know I've told the board this. I want everyone, whether it's community board, to know, like, the KCBA team has been absolutely phenomenal to work with. From day one, the moment of go, the level of professionalism, the level of expertise, the level of ability to listen, and the preparedness at all of our meetings where they're coming, looking at ideas. Here's what we heard last time. Let's get feedback on this. The responsiveness, it has far exceeded my expectations. But I just want the board to know that, and to publicly thank the two of you and your entire team and let you know that you have done an outstanding job, and we're really proud to work with you. So thank you.
And I want to thank Mr. Bremersky, Mrs. Hall, Mrs. James. We had Mr. Brooks here before. We did a very thorough job of picking the architect, and I think we picked the right one, and it's starting, I believe it's going to show its advantages already. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, our next item on the agenda is West Campus fiber and conduit replacement. That's Mr. Graham, I believe, going to lead that.
Yep, that's me. One second. All right, so this project, or the two things I'm going to talk about, were technically early in phase 2 of the capital projects plan that we'll talk about a little later in the meeting tonight. And originally we had planned to tackle this in early 2026. However, as you can see from the first bullet up there, the junction box outside of the Buchanan entrance for our fiber conduits that run along the parking lot there up to Kauffman Road was conveniently or unfortunately crushed by the LASA subcontractors when they were putting in the sewer lines. And as a result of that, we sort of took the opportunity to begin inspecting everything that was there, obviously for damage when they crushed the box, but also to look at the condition of the existing conduits that were there. Now, LASA is going to pay to replace the box, but as we'll go through here, we kind of discovered through the inspection process, there's a considerable amount of work that needs to be done to that stretch of conduit. Which we kind of knew was coming, but because of some factors here we'll talk about, I chose to bring this tonight to try and get started on this project just because the timing lines up with some different things. So the first piece of this is the conduit itself that runs from where that yellow line is in the image there at the bottom from outside the Buchanan entrance down to the utility poles at Kauffman Road. And as I mentioned, we did some inspections there. It is in worse shape than I was anticipating. I was also anticipating a second 1-inch conduit. I knew there was only a single 1-inch, or I thought there were two, but there is only a single 1-inch under there, which at this point, we cannot fit anything else through it, which presents some problems with work we need to do with Comcast. Coming up, I'm also not certain we're going to be able to remove the fiber that's in there, given how bad the condition of the conduit. That is also going to prevent us from replacing the fiber that's in there, which was part of this project as well, which we'll talk about on the next page. Conveniently, the path that LASA chose for the sewer line is almost exactly the same as this conduit, and that area has already been torn up rather badly. But at this point, our maintenance department has not regraded or reseeded anything. So from a timing perspective, it actually works out very well to replace the conduit now so that they don't go to all the trouble of regrading and reseeding, only for us to have to go through and rip everything up again next year. And on the plus side, I do not need to do any digging through the parking lot. The conduits into Buchanan are in good enough shape. We don't need to do anything with the paved surfaces. It is only the dirt surface that's already ripped apart that you can see in the top right up there for the length of that conduit. So the second portion of this is the fiber that actually runs along the west side of campus. We have fiber on both sides. There's a conduit on the east side that basically forms a ring around the campus with connections in the high school and the other buildings on the south side of the campus. The left side up there, the one that we're talking about here, dates back to the LMS construction. And we ideally need to be replacing all of this before construction begins at the high school. And again, this is why we were originally planning to do this in 2026 to get everything in place. Mainly because the other fiber run for the high school goes through a future construction zone. The idea being we would have good fiber in place so that if we do need to relocate backhoes, attack conduit, things like that that are unexpected, we don't accidentally take down the high school's connectivity when that's going on. From a timing perspective, we haven't talked publicly yet. It was alluded to about relocating the baseball field. But the proposed location of the baseball field relocation, which may start sooner than 2026, is actually on the east side of campus, right on top of where the east side of campus fiber runs. So there's a possibility that may need to be moved, spliced, disrupted in some way. Having this in place now gives me another path so that, again, if we have to do work on that side of campus, I'm not taking buildings down or anything like that. We can continue uninterrupted. As you can see there, the yellow line representing the current fiber, there is a leg and a splice that runs over to LPC. We have no intention of replacing that. It is not needed based on other conduits we have down to new LIC and other paths in the lower end of campus. So that will all just be ripped out of the conduit and not replaced. We are only talking here about replacing the run from the high school down along Moomaw Drive back around to the rear of LMS. Computer. So just to give you an idea of the work, we did go out and get some quotes on things. I have 3 quotes there on fiber. Gettle was the lowest. They also did the fiber work on the east side of campus. As you can see, the numbers are quite a spread. I did meet in person with all 3. No concerns with Gettle. They did fantastic work for us before. I have no concerns with using them. Their number did include all work. Dolphin Data's did as well, and KIT's was closer, but they also were going to bill us time for the removal of the LPC circuit. I was only able to get 2 excavation quotes. Kozer's was the lowest there. He was also willing to let us procure the conduit itself rather than paying for a middleman essentially to purchase that. So even with us buying it, it's still a cheaper option there together. Both the fiber and the excavation work are right at or a little bit under the original number, which I think was 35,000 that we had in the October 24 capital plan that this was approved in originally. So I wanted to share this with you tonight, get any questions you might have. But given that the area is already ripped up, I was hoping to proceed with this unless there were any questions or concerns or objections to it.
So the new conduit, it's going to replace the old conduit?
Yes.
And are we going to go a little bit bigger in diameter in case?
Yes, we're
Okay.
putting in 2 3-inch instead of 1 1-inch.
Okay.
Yep.
Sounds good.
And that would mirror what we have elsewhere on campus.
So we'll definitely have room for expansion. Do you know what material construction the conduit is and how long that's supposed to last?
It's scheduled 40 pipe.
PVC?
PVC, yeah.
Okay.
There's a stone base under it, and then they lay marking tape on top and some other things to prevent it from getting hit.
Any idea lifetime underground?
I mean, the PVC is still intact. The 1-inch that's there, it's kind of been crushed in some places. I will be long gone. I think all of us will be long gone before that will be an issue.
Okay. All right. Long
Yep.
time. All
Long
right.
time. Yeah.
Just, excuse me, a question about the regrading and reseeding. Since LASA tore all that up, are we still responsible for the cost of it, or they're reimbursing the cost of regrading?
The subcontractor working with LASA is responsible for all of the subgrading and the seating.
Okay, so we'll finish the conduit lay and then they'll come back and do the regrading and seeding. Is that the plan?
When they get back, I don't know. I know.
Yeah, they've come back and have done some of it. There's been some issues with
Yeah.
them.
I would
Getting
question in the contract, because if we delay them, they probably will say you're
That
lost.
we're going to be responsible, yes.
Yeah.
I know we also, in speaking with some of the maintenance crew, had some concerns about the type of grass seed and other things LASA was going to provide compared to what we probably would like and will end up
Correct.
with. So.
Correct. So we're probably going to have to add some extra even to what they.
Do some of our.
So the driver just not watch where he's going and ran over the junction box or what?
Yeah, they turned the track on a backhoe on top of it and ground it into dust.
Okay.
It was,
It was kind of impressive, actually.
and it was old, so it was brittle, but
Understood.
he didn't help matters.
Okay.
It was clear to him that it was there.
Other questions for Mr. Graham? All right, let's move on to the last item for buildings and ground, which is an update on a 3-year capital plan by Mrs. James.
Oh. There we go. So this is nothing new. You remember that we're moving forward with the 3-year plan for capital. So this is just the items that sorry. Okay, these are the items that were on the first year of work, and I just wanted to show you this because under the budget column, we had some budget amounts put in there, and you can see you've recently approved bids and contracts and so forth for some of these items, and they're coming in below what the budgeted amount was. Keeping in mind where you see the 2 roofs that are going to be replaced at recoded at LMS and LPC. We do have that 1.5 million in grant money that also will help with that. We don't have the information yet regarding the stage and lighting, so we're still waiting on that. But we also have before we didn't have a determined amount for the paving projects that are going to be done this summer. We now have that. So we're coming in, I'm pleased with where the numbers are landing at this point. We're coming in lower than what we had originally anticipated.
It looks like to me that one of them came in $800,000 more than it was bidded at.
Would-
Actually paying.
Yeah, so
Which one are you talking about?
$3.2 million and it was 2.4. So not all of them came in lower. I mean, sorry,
That's lower.
you're right, disregard.
They're all over.
I looked at the wrong, I was
Okay.
doing it the other way.
Wrong column.
You're right.
Okay. So I just wanted to share this with you just to keep you abreast of what was, how we're moving forward with the projects and so forth.
Great. Any questions for Mrs. James? Let's go ahead and take a 5-minute break and be back here at 20 after a 4-minute break.
in the Finance Committee meeting, and we're going to start off with a budget presentation or an update from Mrs. Hall.
You need to skip right to the next slide. So back in February, I brought you the first pass of what the expenses look like. In the last month, we spent a lot of time digging into the various line items to see where we needed to spend more time. You will see that the picture is a little bit different than it was in February. We've identified some additional expense. So at that time, we were at a 2.63% increase. Right now, we're looking at a 3.58. This is to balance the budget. This does not include additional millage for debt service. We'll talk about that later. It also does not include additional basic ed, special ed, or adequacy funding that we may or may not get. It does include $15 million in new debt service that we will be approving in April. And what really drove this was some increases to our special ed costs and our tuition costs. Special ed, we noticed looking at trends, has been historically under budgeted. So we wanted to make sure that we rectified that to give an actual picture of what is likely to look like in terms of expenses. So this is where we are as of today. Next slide. So just to give you an idea of our process, we had the preliminary, which is in the second column. We went through and made a number of reductions where we could on discretionary items, which took us down to about a 2.04. But then with the special ed and tuition increases, it took us back to 3.58. So we did some, even though it looks like it's up, we did take some down as well. Next slide. Just as a reminder, with the revenue, our adjusted Act 1 index is 4.8%, which comes to about approximately 4.56 million in additional revenue if you were to go to the index. Approximately 950,000 in revenue is generated by every 1% of a tax increase. I do have a tax increase chart at the end, but at 4.8, that would increase the average household tax bill by $174. We hit our final phase of ESSER funding back in September, so we no longer have that, but we do have expenses that continue on without that funding, including support staff incentives and substitute incentives. And we also included $1.5 million in facilities improvement grant that we received from the DCED for the roofing projects at LPC and LMS. Next slide.
So, Mrs. Hall,
Sure.
the budget projections that you've been giving us that show the remaining taxing authority under various scenarios.
That's there. It's there.
Right, so, right. So now this is the first time we've seen, if we go to the index this year, it looks like we would run a surplus, even if state funding stays level. Am I, because you're showing with no tax increase, you're showing a deficit of 3.4 million.
Correct.
So with 4.8%, that would generate 4.56 million.
Sure, if you were not to put any additional money away for debt service for the high school project. Because don't forget, that's another factor.
Wait, well, isn't that part of the budget?
It is not. This is the general fund budget. I thought I mentioned.
So she will get to that.
Yes, this is just the general fund budget, just to balance the budget. The additional millage build in, I will talk about later.
Okay, I don't see anywhere where it says this is the just the general fund. but-
I mean, I said it.
Okay,
Happy to type it on the slide for you. You can go to the next slide. So just a picture of our total revenue, which has not, has changed a little bit because we have an updated assessed value. So we're now sitting at 153 million in expected revenue with no increases to special ed funding, basic ed funding, or adequacy. Next slide. Just to look at our federal revenue, and the reason I'm pulling this out is there is some talk that there could be some loss of Title 2 through 4 funds. Mr. Bomerski, if you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so a couple different legislative meetings that I've been in. One of the things that we are hearing is that there seems to be some consensus that all likelihood Title I funding seems to be, in a sense, will stay in terms of pass through from the state to us. There is a question around Titles 2, 3, and 4 as to whether or not from the federal level that will actually come as pass through to schools. Partially because of what those title funds can be used for, And there's a question in regards to some executive orders, whether there's conflict. Title I is strictly formula based. And what we're hearing is a lot of the executive orders talked around the non-formula based funds. So it is just something to be mindful of, that is an additional $305,000.
$305,000.
But there are other federal dollars that are passed through from the state, such as food subsidy with food services, transportation services that we budget for. However, should those not come to fruition, that would be an issue for the school budget. I'm not saying it's not going to happen. It's just something that we wanted to bring to your attention because they're starting to have some conversation around possibilities and in the sense preparing for it. However, one of the things that I did hear was that should there be a big change like that, there's a feeling in Harrisburg that they would need to figure out what to do because obviously it would be a massive shock to all schools and that they would need to figure out how to provide some initial support in at least year one. And what beyond that, I don't know. So it isn't, I'm not throwing this out here to raise alarm bells. It's just simply awareness that it is something we just need to be mindful of as we're continuing budget conversations in the next few months.
Mr. Bremersky, these other federal subsidies, for food stuff, what do they amount to? They're not shown in here, they're built in.
They're built into, like, food service is a separate budget to begin with. And then the transportation subsidy is built
It's
in.
built into the state revenue because it's a pass-through.
Right.
So I can get, I don't, off the top of my head, Charles, I don't know.
So it's mainly transportation food.
Those are the two big ones in addition to titles 2, 3, and 4.
Mrs. Hall, can I just get a clarification from you with the way the column headings are? Are those year ending, like school year ending 24, 25, 26?
So it's 24 be the 23, 24 year. So that's our actuals. That's what we actually received. 25 is the year we're in. It's 24, 25.
School year ending,
Yeah.
okay.
So sorry, we just, that's
Yeah,
how it is. in
just
the
wanted to make
systems.
sure
Yeah.
it wasn't.
It's in the
annual.
ending.
Yeah.
Correct.
And if I can just add one more piece there, Mrs. Hall, real quick. For titles 2 and 4, actually, let's start with title 4 and work backwards. Dr. Dan, correct me if I'm wrong. We roll title 4 into title 1. Title 3 is used for our English learners as additional supports, additional resources, in addition to what we provide. And then from a Title 2 standpoint, we also roll that into Title 1. So title for us, Title 2 and 4, though you have a wide variety of uses, we do roll right into Title 1. So that supports our elementary students who are receiving Title 1 reading services. So that is how we use those dollars. It is historically how we have used those dollars as a district.
For a while?
For a very long time.
Okay.
Very long time. Well before my time in the district.
Next slide. So just to give you an idea on the expenditures, what the primary cost drivers are, it's a $3.65 million increase to salaries and benefits, 938,000 to special education services, 850 increase in student transportation costs. That is the contract that we agreed to with STA. It's a 3.5% increase. Additional money for tuition, which is approved private schools, cyber and charters, and 1.8 million for elementary science program, as well as increased costs for other supplies and services. We're seeing, supplies coming in higher costs. We have an increase to the electricity that we're going to be using next year. We got that through the consortium. So there's some things we had to bake in that are everyday expenses that will increase going into next year.
634,000.
Yep.
That's an increase over that previous year.
Correct.
So what is the total cost?
The total for tuition. Mrs. Marchese, do you have that? I think it's on my next one. It's on my next slide. It's 6.7 million. 6.7 million.
Okay, so
And that's, just to be clear, that's not all traditional cyber school, that's
all
people are thinking
combined.
it's all tuition for other outside placement.
okay, that's going up 10%. No idea why so much inflation. Other reasons?
Placements of various students.
I can't hear you.
Placements of various students. Placements of various students. And historically,
Could you use your microphone,
sure,
please?
historically, we may not have budgeted appropriately for those. So as Karen said, we're working to look at that and make sure that we are budgeting for it.
So-
Would that,
No, I see. For example, the cyber school, like our cyber numbers are pretty consistent. We're a slight decline, but the cost of cyber tuition is up. And so while we either are flat or at times less, our expenses
Yeah.
cause more of a tuition.
Right, and so what I'm talking about right now is the approved private schools. Those are the ones that we may have, at 2.2 million, but we've budgeted 1.7 million. And so those are placements that we can't control. The student comes in and out of the district. So it's fluid.
So they can increase their cost 10%, but they don't have any control over it.
I'm not sure if I would say it's increasing their cost so much as a student coming in that you hadn't planned on. So I'm not, I'm not, that, yeah.
Would you consider those, that the category you're speaking of now, that is more of a special ed, a mental
Yeah,
health, a physical?
The students
need?
that we have are at, say, News Story or River Rock Academy. So they're different placements that we
Okay.
have.
I thought after COVID, got back to school one way down.
It did. But it's been flat for the last 3 years.
You're talking
For
about
cyber.
varying programs. So approved private school programs, students with different special needs, students with different academic needs that we're not able to service here. Go to a different entity. That cost is on us. Cyber school, those numbers did, COVID was up back then.
Yeah.
But the cost of cyber is expensive.
Right.
And that's something that we're hoping legislatively is addressed. Charter schools in the area, whether it's brick and mortar, cyber charter, like those pieces as well.
Right. So yes, the charter school numbers have gone down, but like he says, the cost is going up. So it kind of balances itself out. You have some students that are graduating, but then we do historically stay at a certain number. So we don't want to plan for them to not come and lose out. So I want to make sure that we're conservative with it.
Hopefully we get cyber reform.
Next slide. Just to give you an overview of what the expenditures are by category. As I talked about, the salaries and benefits are your primary drivers. They're 70% of our budget, so any increase there is pretty significant. Transportation is contractual. We talked about special ed and tuition. The debt service includes the new $15 million borrowing that we will be doing in 2025. We've done a pretty good job at bringing down other expenses over the years. And what you'll see in the transfer to cap projects is two things. It is the $1.5 million from DCED, as well as the 1459, which was the millage build-in for debt service that we did in the 24-25 budget. So we have to preserve that and not use that money because we need it for debt service down the road. So that money goes into cap projects until such
Ms. Hall,
time
could you,
as we
you
take
say
on
that
our debt.
again? The transfer to cap projects, part of it's for the increased debt service?
Part of it was the millage we built in last year. We built in 1.65% of a tax increase. So that is set aside. So we're not using it in our general fund budget because then it won't be available when the debt service comes around.
Understood.
And then the 1.5 is the DCED grant for the roofs for LPC and LMS.
Okay.
Because we included the revenue. So
Well,
we
that's
need
a
to,
grant.
that's the grant. Yeah.
That's-
Okay.
That's our half, that's our, the 1.5 million or whatever, that's our part that we have to pay for that grant.
No, that's the money that we're getting from DCD. Yeah, so it comes in, but I want to put it back out because it doesn't, it's not part of an ongoing revenue.
Yep.
Yeah, so that has to be pushed back out. All right, next slide. Just a representation graphically of where the funds are going. Like I said, it's primarily salaries and benefits is always going to be your top. Yeah, top expense at 70%. So next slide, I'm going to dive a little bit more into that because we do have so much of our budget in wages and benefits. Wages we can pull out by job type. We cannot do that for benefits, but just to give you an idea of kind of where the money is and what the increases are, you can see we broke it out by professional, support staff, administrative, and extracurricular. The extracurricular looks like it had a big jump. That was simply that we reclassified our department coordinators and our tech support from professional extra hours into stipends where they do belong. So it's not that big of a jump. We just reclassified some of those wages. Okay, next slide. Benefits, like I said, you can't break these out by job type, but as you increase salaries, you increase PSERS, you increase FICA Medicare, so that just goes along with that. And we saw a 15% increase to our medical expenses going into this year, so that is also accounted for there. And the PSERS rate went up slightly from 33.9 to 34. Next slide. So this is where we are currently with the Act 1 index. So you'll see the 358 that I've been speaking about, the 181, which is the projected millage built in for the debt service commitment of 211 million, which leaves us in the negative in taxing authority. It leaves us over a 4.8% tax increase. So there's a couple ways to go about that. Next slide. One way, we know we typically, historically, have received additional state funding. We don't know what it's going to be until after the budget's approved. So we have always budgeted flat. We could, put in something conservative if that's what you'd like us to do. We could, at least initially, use the unassigned fund balance until we know what we are getting, which means we wouldn't necessarily use it if we get enough funding to close this gap, which is about $560,000. So we have the option when we file it with PDE to say that we're going to take the deficit. If you go to the index and take the deficit, you'd reduce the fund balance by $563,000.
Ms. Stahl, this assumes no increase in state funding.
Yes,
Right.
we just shared that.
I'm sorry?
Mrs. Hall just shared that, yes.
Okay.
So
So if there's an increase in state funding,
Then you wouldn't
we
use
wouldn't have to
this.
dip into
Right,
others.
but when we file the 2028 with PDE, we have to say where the money's coming from, and we don't know that we're getting state funding. And we don't typically assume that, but that's where this could be the placeholder. If we get additional state funding, then we don't touch it.
the debt service commitment, is that for the 4 or 5 year plan? We talked about possibly doing that over 5 years.
Well, actually,
correct?
we're doing it over 6, because this is,
That's
this
over
is year
6.
2 of 6.
Okay.
Mhm. Yeah. Just, that is there for your consideration. Next chart is just our historic tax increases, just to give you an idea where the index has been and where the tax increase has been. You've seen this before. This is not new information. Next slide. I'm sometimes asked where we are in the county in terms of our millage rates. So we're right about dead center in terms of our peers in the county, to give you an idea of where they are, where we are. I don't know where anybody is going for the next budget year. We haven't had that discussion yet, but this is where we are today for the 24-25 fiscal year. Next slide. Oh, sorry, already there. So just tax increase scenarios. I said in one of my earlier slides that if you went to the index, what that would mean to the taxpayer, and I just broke it out 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 8. We can obviously slice and dice this many ways, but just to give you an idea of what that looks like to the average homeowner in terms of additional real estate taxes.
Just for the purposes of the discussion, what do we use as the median household number? Is that-
197.7.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't see it
Okay,
there. I
it's up-
apologize.
hidden up in the top.
Oh, yeah, they're at the top. I was thinking it was 200,000, so that's right then.
We get that from the tax bureau. Okay, next one. So just in terms of next steps, we are going to continue to review and refine revenue and expense projections as best we can. We'll come up with some budget reduction options for the board to consider if that's the route you'd like to go. Would like to give you the option. And then the rest are the dates where we're going to speak more about finalizing this budget, because we're coming into April, so time's starting to run out and we would need to get it approved at the June 10th board meeting. We could get it approved later. I'd rather not. I'd like to stick to the schedule. So we have it in well before the due date on the 30th. Questions?
Yeah, one of your earlier slides, you showed places that a number where you started making some reductions.
Sure.
Just general belt tightening, and I'm assuming, I think if I recall, it was about a 500,000.
Actually, it was, Mike, go that slide 3. So between the two, it's a little over. It's probably 6.5, 650 maybe.
Do you, I don't know if you can share publicly, but any examples of what kind of things
Cool.
those were? You don't have to do all of it.
So
just
we
like
had
the
some
kind of thing.
duplication, like, so we'd have curriculum budgeted for something, as did ELD. So
Okay.
going through, Dr. Dandridge went through and noticed some duplicates. Dr. Messer, I forget. There's some other areas where we kind of took a hard look at some of the things and said, is this right? Are these estimates? Can we get better, numbers
Okay.
to try to chip it away at those?
Okay, but nothing was like eliminated. It was just cleaning.
No,
out.
it was just trying to see where we could tighten it up just a little bit.
Got it. Okay.
Or what
thank you.
things we don't need to do, what things we could, replacement cycles for
I know you
certain
talked
things.
about
I
that
know
before.
we did talk about replacing some equipment for FCS now with the high school. That doesn't
Right,
really make
absolutely.
sense.
Yep.
So that got removed. It's things like that
Yep.
that added up. There's. Thank you.
I'm just gonna say, they're not gonna say it, but Mrs. Hall, Mrs. Marchese, the business office, like all the individuals working on this, she shared this with me the other day, but there are 12 to 15,000 account codes
There's 4,500 accounts just in wages and benefits. So
that they have been piling through to look at past expenditures, budgets to actual, like really trying to hone in and kind of really refine. And so I just want to thank both of you and the team at large, because it's a ton of time going through all of those to try and find those areas and then asking just additional questions and seeking more information. And they're really doing it from the standpoint of how do we make sure that our budget numbers are the best they can be, given that it's a projection. And so just thank you for the amount of time, energy, and effort that you're spending behind the scenes, because nobody sees that except if you're working on it. And I know you're spending a ton of time doing that, so thank you.
I don't have a lot to say because I think the numbers speak for themselves. I think where my greatest concern is. One of the largest part of our budgets is that 70%. It's our professional staff, it's our wages, it's our benefits, it's our health insurance. And recently we approved a contract. And so with that contract, we have an increase in our expenses that will be ongoing. And when I look at this, I don't panic. But I'm also slightly bit concerned, having been part of budgets like this, that this trend is not going the right direction with some of the things this district needs to do into the future. And I surely wouldn't want to get to a place where we have to make emergency decisions around it. So I'm not sounding an alarm, but I'm concerned. Hence the reason that I didn't support the contract from the beginning, because of the concern that clearly is outlined here, that there needed to be some concessions there for some of the other things that needed to be a priority. Mr. Maris asked a question that I had, and I think we already know the answer to it, but one of the questions was, can we delay the 1.8 million in the science? And I think what I heard from the presentation was that's impossible, but I guess it warrants asking that question again to say, can we delay that based on what we're faced with related to this budget? And again, it pains me to even have to have these discussions, but when you start to pump extra money into one area of this budget, you will have to start to have these discussions at some point. There's no alternative. So we bought ourselves that ticket. So now we're on the train. So I think we need to ask that question.
So that's something we've been talking about, is the curriculum, the science curriculum, and that's one of the options we can bring back. I don't know, Mr. Bomerski, if you want to specifically talk about that.
Yep, so I just, first and foremost, we are not coming to you from a science program standpoint because we're like, okay, let's just bring a science program to you in the curriculum cycle process. We're coming to you on the science side because the state is changing the standards. The state is changing the science test. It's moving from 4th to 5th grade. The standards are completely different. And so our staff needs to be prepared to be able to teach our students with new materials. Can that be delayed? The answer is yes, but the consequences of that are potentially our teachers won't have the necessary or comparable resources that others may have in other districts. And so test scores, which I know is important, but not the end all, and that has been consistent from the board over the years, but may not be, it's new, it may not be where it needs to be. We are exploring options to look at, could it be a phased in implementation where we're starting in potentially grades 4, 5, 6, just to bring you cost dollars. And then second year K to 3. We're looking at all of those things. to try and figure out what would be the best recommendation. And so we are exploring. I don't have an answer today. But the essence of your question, the simple answer is yes, but there's ramifications with that answer of yes. And you
Well-
just need to be aware of that. But it's not what we would recommend, but are we looking at other options to bring to you? Yes, we are.
I guess my other question is, we just got hit with a bunch of things and we lost grants. Special education, almost $1 million increase. Has that been typical of what we've seen over the years?
Well, so what we've seen is an under budgeting. You don't know what your complement of students are going to be from year to year. So we have to base it off of who we have now.
Yeah.
So, and that, you don't see decreases in special ed costs in any district.
No, I'm just saying, was that an abrupt change from the previous year as far as an increase or not?
Not in terms of what we're actually spending. It's an increase, but it's been under budget traditionally.
Gotcha. And the student transportation, there's nothing we can do in
That's a-
fuel or drivers.
That's,
We're stuck.
well, I mean, the fuel with the fuel station will come down a little bit, but we've already accounted for that. Derek
Okay.
already built that in, and the contract with STA is 3.5%.
And we already talked about tuition. There's nothing we can do about that either.
So am I safe to say if we would prolong because every year we're going to curriculum, revisiting different new curriculum, right? So I feel like we're kicking the can down the road if we do half this year and half
Right.
next year.
Yeah.
Because next year we're gonna have another curriculum we have to do, so you have to pay the piper sometime. Is that kind of what I'm gathering?
Yes.
Additionally, I think our Act One index is going to continue to go down. So
That's the projection. Yeah.
we won't have the wiggle room in future years necessarily.
Correct.
Well, unless other things go back down.
But
We might not see the same increases next year in some of these other categories.
I wouldn't count on anything staying the same or or going down, let alone, I'd be happy if they stayed the same, frankly.
Well, and just, the transportation, a good portion of that increase is replenishing buses. The age of buses needing, I believe we were on, this contract calls for 18, 20 new buses.
Yes. Because we were at the end of the other
Right.
contract cycle, so now they're in the
Right.
cycle. to
And
put
so
in new
part of
buses.
that, like just when you look at long-term, so one of the other conversations we're having is also working with our teams to look at that long-range budgeting. And I know it was discussed here at Education Programs Committee meeting, making sure we're looking ahead and being able to plan strategically for those big, one-off kind of spends as opposed to pushing it down the road. So that is something that we are working in all areas, moving forward.
Mrs. Hall, are you gonna give a projection of what this budget year is gonna look like? And is there a chance we'll have money left over?
So our projection currently is to hit very, very close. We just did it for our bonds ratings call, and we think we're going to be within $50,000. So
Okay.
that's where it looks.
You're gonna
today.
share that with us maybe the
Okay.
next meeting? Okay, thank you.
Does anybody else have any comments, questions related to this? It's concerning to me because the decisions we make today will affect the district long after I'm not sitting here. And this board, I think, needs to be really careful and strategic in what they look at and how they make decisions today. Because even if it doesn't look like a problem right now, the decisions being made today will affect this district 5 and 10 years down the road. And I'm concerned when I look at the path that this district's going, having been involved with finances in other districts in the business side, that it's not an emergency. But if there's not a change in course here, I really believe it will get to a place where some really difficult decisions will have to be made, and not just asking about a $1.8 million science curriculum. It might be we can't afford to do it. I'd hate to see that ever happen. I hate to even have to ask the question, but I'm just cautioning everyone who's on this board now and might be on the board in the future, long after I'm here, please be diligent when you look at some of these decisions that have long-term effects, because it will impact everything else that you do. Anything else? All right, we've got one more item on the agenda. It's a contract. We've talked about this contract before, but we haven't seen it yet. There were no changes to the contract. But if you have questions, before we move to approve the contract, we'll get a motion in a second. And then we'll ask for some discussion. So can I have a motion to approve the contract in a second,
moved.
please?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Keener. Thank you, Mr. Maris. Any discussion around this contract? This is what we talked about the last time we were together. This is just the actual formal contract coming before you.
If I remember correctly, we had gotten some other contracts as well, and this was the cheapest one. Didn't we get like two or three bids for this contract?
Do you have anything to add at all, Mrs. James? No? This is all?
No.
Anyone else? Any discussion? If not, I'll ask for a motion to, I'll ask for a vote. All those in favor? All right, that's gonna be, I guess, 8-0. I think we're missing Mr. Wagner. Oh, sorry, 7-0. Oh, she did. Okay, excellent. So that is 8-0. And is there anything else for the good of the cause? You can see the schedule of upcoming meetings. And then I just need a motion for adjournment in a second.
Motion.
Thank you, Mr. Garber.
Second.
All right, thank you, Mr. Maris. All in favor? All right, thank you. That concludes the meeting. I do have one question post the meeting. This is a question for me. When is the town forum? What's this? Is that on our board news?
Yes.
Because I didn't see the time.
April 2nd,
I have that.
6:30 PM.
But
6:30.
Just to
Okay.
clarify, that was a motion to adjourn to
Exec
executive
session
session,
for
right?
first.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Motion to adjourn to executive session. Thank you,
personnel.
Mr. Keener.